This is the dog you think you know. The pug, flat-faced and round-eyed, snorting contentedly at your feet, is one of the most recognizable animals on Earth. But almost everything the average person believes about this breed is wrong. The pug in your lap isn't an ancient design. It isn't a natural shape. And according to modern science, it might not even qualify as a typical dog anymore. For 2,000 years, we told ourselves a comforting story. The pug is old and noble, bred by emperors, carried across oceans by royalty, a living antique that time never touched and never needed to improve. It's a lovely story, and it's also, in almost every way that matters, false. When researchers finally turned the tools of genetics and large-scale veterinary data on this breed, the picture that came back didn't match the legend. The DNA tells the story of a dog that was reshaped slowly, deliberately, and recently by human hands. Its famous flat face isn't a gift from ancient China, it's a modern exaggeration. And the features people find most adorable are the exact same features quietly wrecking its health. The truth about the pug isn't that it's a bad dog. It's that it's a made dog, engineered more heavily than almost any animal we've ever kept beside us. And once you see how it was made, you can't unsee it. Quick thing before we go back in time. Everything on this channel is about the truth behind the dog you think you know, the part the breeders and the kennel clubs would rather you didn't hear. If that's what you're here for, take a second and subscribe. Now, let's find out where this dog actually began. The pug story starts in China, and it starts early, more than 2,000 years ago, around 400 BC. That makes the pug one of the oldest dog breeds still walking the planet. Before Rome fell, before most of the breeds we know today existed, even as ideas, small flat-faced companion dogs were already curled up in Chinese palaces. They were called the lo-sze, and they were no ordinary pets. These dogs belonged to emperors. They lived inside the imperial court, treated less like animals and more like minor nobility, and the most prized among them were said to have their own servants and even their own guards. To own one was a statement of status, and to be given one was an honor. Tibetan Buddhist monks kept their own small companions in the monasteries, which wove these flat-faced dogs into centuries of both spiritual and royal life. And here's the first crack in the myth. The pug wasn't simply found in ancient China, it was built there. Chinese breeders deliberately combined several flat-faced companion dogs, including the ancestors of the Pekingese and the lo-sze itself, and they selected again and again for one specific look. Even the wrinkles were intentional. There's an old belief that the folds on a good pug's forehead were prized because they resembled the Chinese character for prince. The face was a canvas, and the emperors were the artists. But here's what matters most. The ancient pug was not the pug you picture now. Yes, it was a compact, short-faced companion, but that extreme, pushed-in, almost flat profile we treat as the correct pug look today, those imperial dogs never wore it. Early depictions show an animal with a more moderate muzzle, flat-faced for sure, but with room to breathe. The original was an exaggeration of a normal dog, and the modern pug is an exaggeration of that exaggeration. This is where genetics enters the story. DNA studies confirm what the history books always claimed, that the pug's roots run deep into ancient East Asian dog populations. Its lineage is genuinely old, but that ancient origin is exactly why the modern transformation is so startling. We took a dog with 2 millennia of history and, in a tiny slice of that time, reshaped its skull, its airway, and its spine faster than evolution could ever move. The emperors started the pug, but they didn't finish it. That job fell to Europe and to us. For most of its history, the pug stayed hidden. These dogs were treasures of the Chinese court, and China wasn't in the habit of exporting its treasures. That changed in the 16th century when Dutch traders opened shipping routes between Europe and the East. Along with silk and spice and porcelain, a few of those flat-faced palace dogs made the long voyage west, and Europe fell in love almost instantly. The pug became royalty's dog all over again, this time in a different empire. Nowhere was that bond stronger than with the House of Orange, the ruling dynasty of the Netherlands. According to the legend, a pug once saved the life of William of Orange himself, barking and waking him just in time to warn of a night attack on his camp. Whether that's history or flattering myth, the pug became the official dog of the Orange dynasty. And when William later took the English throne, the pugs came with him, trotting straight into the heart of European power. From there, the breed spread through the courts and drawing rooms of the continent. Aristocrats posed with them, and painters immortalized them. The English artist William Hogarth loved his pug so much that he painted his own dog, Trump, right into his work, which was basically 18th century celebrity endorsement. And the royalty connection didn't stop there. Napoleon's wife, Josephine, kept a pug named Fortune, and according to accounts of her imprisonment before the marriage, she used Fortune to carry secret messages tucked beneath his collar to her family outside the prison walls. Even in captivity, a pug was running errands for the powerful. And then came the pug's biggest patron of all, Queen Victoria. She bred pugs personally, and where Victoria went, Victorian society followed. The breed exploded in popularity, showing up on postcards, in paintings, and as porcelain figurines on mantelpieces across the empire. But notice what's happening underneath all that charm. Every time the pug entered a new court, a new country, a new era of fashion, it was bred again, and bred toward whatever that era found most appealing. In China, it was imperial taste. In Europe, it was aristocratic taste. And in the Victorian age, it was the sentimental, ornamental taste of a society that liked its pets small, expressive, and exaggerated. Each generation nudged the dog a little further from the animal that first stepped off those Dutch trading ships. No single breeder set out to harm the pug. They were chasing cuteness, prestige, and novelty, the same things we still chase today. But the cumulative effect of all that selective breeding, century after century, was about to catch up with the pug in a way nobody saw coming, because the face was still getting flatter. Here's the part almost no one talks about. If you put a photo of a pug from the 1920s next to a pug bred today, they look like two different animals. The older dog has a snout, an actual visible muzzle sticking out from its face. The modern dog often has almost none. In the span of about a century, the pug's nose effectively retreated into its skull. That didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen through evolution. It happened because we asked for it. Show ring standards and popular taste kept rewarding flatter faces, bigger eyes, deeper wrinkles, and rounder heads, and breeders selected the dogs that best matched that ideal generation after generation, while the ideal itself kept getting more extreme. This is the trait geneticists call brachycephaly, the shortened, flattened skull, and the pug became one of its most exaggerated examples on Earth. This is where the DNA turns the story from charming to sobering. When researchers examine the pug's genome, they find a breed with alarmingly low genetic diversity, the result of a small founding population and generations of breeding inside a closed gene pool. In plain terms, there just isn't much genetic variety left to work with, and the genes selected for that iconic look are physically linked to the breed's biggest problems. The same instructions that build a flat, wrinkled, round-eyed face also build a shortened airway, crowded teeth, bulging eyes with too little protection, and skin folds that invite infection. And it goes further than the skull. Pugs also suffer from hemivertebrae, malformed spinal bones that develop in a wedge shape rather than a normal block, which can lead to nerve damage and paralysis. The same selective pressure that pushed the face inward bent the spine, too. That's the uncomfortable truth the genetics reveal. The pug's appearance and the pug's suffering aren't two separate issues. They're the same issue. You can't fully separate the cute from the compromised, because they were bred together into the same animal on purpose. The squashed face people find irresistible is the identical feature that turns breathing into a daily struggle. And this is the deepest crack in the myth. We tell ourselves the pug is a natural little dog that just happens to snore and snort and wheeze, as if those sounds are quirks or personality. They're not quirks. They're the audible sound of a skull built too small for the tissue packed inside it. One veterinary expert put it bluntly, saying the pug's brain is squished into a box that's too small, and that breathing through those tiny stenotic nares, the clinically narrowed nostrils that are a hallmark of the breed, is like trying to breathe through a very narrow straw. Behind those nostrils, an elongated, soft palate often blocks the airway further, and together those two features are the primary drivers of brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome, the condition that turns every breath the pug takes into a small act of effort. And there's one more health crisis the myth leaves out entirely. Approximately 1 in 80 pugs will develop pug-dog encephalitis, also known as necrotizing meningoencephalitis, a fatal inflammatory brain disease that is unique to the breed and has no cure. It typically strikes young to middle-aged dogs, progressing rapidly from seizures to death. It is caused by the immune system attacking the brain's own tissue, and the genetic risk for it appears to be tied to the same closed gene pool that defines the modern pug. The breed doesn't just struggle to breathe. For a meaningful number of them, the brain itself becomes the target. So the pug, that flat-faced, big-eyed companion sold as an ancient, unchanged breed, is really a recent human invention. It's a dog reshaped faster than its own body could keep up. And in 2022, science finally put a number on just how far that transformation had gone. In May of 2022, the Royal Veterinary College in the United Kingdom published a study that should have landed in every home with a pug in it. Researchers drew on the Vet Compass database, pulling the real veterinary records of thousands of dogs, comparing more than 4,000 pugs against tens of thousands of other dogs. And they asked one simple question: how does the health of a pug actually stack up against a normal dog? The answer was worse than even the critics expected. Across a list of 40 common canine disorders, pugs showed significantly increased risk for 23 of them. Not 2 or 3, 23. Overall, a pug turned out to be roughly twice as likely as a typical dog to be diagnosed with one or more disorders in a single year. But it's the specific numbers that stop you cold. Pugs were nearly 54 times more likely than other dogs to suffer from brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome, the cluster of breathing problems caused directly by that flat face. They were about 51 times more likely to have stenotic nares, 13 times more likely to suffer corneal ulcers, and 11 times more likely to develop infections in their skin folds. Read those figures again, because these aren't small, elevated risks. This is a breed predisposed, by its own body plan, to a lifetime of medical problems. And then came the sentence that gave the study its weight, the conclusion the researchers reached after weighing all of it. The health of the pug, they wrote, has now diverged so far from other dogs that it can no longer be considered a typical dog from a health perspective. Sit with that for a second. Scientists studying the pug concluded that it has drifted so far from what a healthy dog is that it barely belongs in the same category anymore. Dr. Dan O'Neill, the lead researcher, didn't soften it. He pointed out that many of the severe health problems are linked directly to the extreme body shape owners find so cute. And he argued that it's time to focus on the health of the dog rather than the whims of the owner. Other experts went further still, advising people not to buy pugs at all until the breed's health and body shape improve. This wasn't a fringe animal rights position. This was mainstream veterinary science, looking at its own patient records and sounding an alarm. That's the truth the myth was hiding. Every snort we called cute, every wheeze we called personality, every vet visit we shrugged off as just how pugs are, the data reveals a pattern of suffering built right into the breed. The pug isn't unlucky. The pug was designed this way by us, one generation of adorable at a time, which leaves the hardest question of all. If we made the pug like this, can we make it better? Here's the part that actually matters. Everything you've just heard isn't a reason to love pugs less. It's a reason to look at them more honestly. Because the pug never asked for any of this. It didn't choose the flat face, the narrow airway, or the crowded skull. We chose those things on its behalf over centuries, and the dog simply lived with the consequences. But there's a strange kind of hope buried in the DNA too. Remember that ancient pug, the imperial companion with the moderate muzzle, the dog that could actually breathe? History shows us that a healthier pug isn't some fantasy. It already existed, and it's where the whole breed started. The extreme flattened version we treat as the real pug is the recent invention, while the sturdier, longer-nosed original is the genuine article, which means the path forward isn't inventing something new. It's undoing some of what we did. And that work is already beginning. Breeders and vets are pushing for pugs with longer muzzles, more open nostrils, and a wider gene pool. Some programs, including outcrossing efforts that have introduced genes from other breeds, are attempting to restore both the genetic diversity and the physical health the pug lost over a century of extreme selection. One of the more discussed approaches involves careful crosses, sometimes referred to as retromops, dogs that carry the pug's temperament and character in a body built closer to what the original lo-sze looked like. It's slow, it's controversial, and it asks people to let go of the exact features they've been taught to find cutest. But it's the only version of loving this breed that the science actually supports. So the next time you see a pug, the next time one snorts up at you with those enormous, hopeful eyes, remember what you're really looking at. Not an ancient, unchangeable relic, and not a natural little dog that just happens to wheeze. You're looking at 2,000 years of human choices written into a single body, a dog shaped by emperors, by royalty, by fashion, and by us. The pug was never what we thought. It was never a finished, perfect antique. It was always a work in progress, one we're still responsible for. And now that the DNA has finally told us the truth, the real question isn't what the pug is. It's what we decide to make it next.